Welcome. I'm Mags. I am the author of a highly successful blog, A&Me. I write about my son, Reese, who has autism. He's 6 years old, and I'm a parent who has gathered all those techniques and those experiences from our professionals and taken a hands-on approach to them. And one of the advantages I have is that you will read about all these techniques, you will learn them from the professionals, but I've been creative with them and I merge them together and I found ways that work. So subscribe below if you want to keep listening, and today I'll be telling you about how you can leave the house. I think that's the biggest one for new parents with young children who are on the autism spectrum, but even going further. So here is my 3 steps to how to get out the house. So how did I get my son out the house without a meltdown? Well, I found a different way to communicate with him. And this was before we started using pictures. So if you're looking at using pictures with your child to communicate, you might want to step back a bit and do what I did. And this was using objects. So step 1, find out or determine where those challenging areas of communication are. So for us, it was when we left the house. We had 3 options of where we could go. And I needed to communicate with my son which one we were going to go to. Now, you might have a different situation. You might have a challenge of going upstairs and it could be bed or bath. You could be going to a local attraction that you always go to and there's a multitude of options. Whatever it is, identify those challenging areas and then find objects you can associate with them. Now, the key part here is don't take an object that they're already playing with, something they love. Don't do that. Find an object they don't know about that they will start to use to associate with that activity. So in our case, when we left the house, we had car, we could go in the car, we could go across to the school, or we could go up to the park. So this is what I did. I got a tennis ball. That was the reference, the object that said we were going to the park. Quite simple, nothing fancy. A tennis ball. I then had a car, not exactly like our own car outside, and that's the point here. It doesn't have to represent the exact thing you're talking about. It has to be close, but you can be creative. So this was the car that we used as a symbol of leaving the house and going in the car. And then the third one, like I said, we had the school across the road where we had to go to pick up my son's elder brother. And this was really complicated. Well, it is when you think about it, or what represents a school. So we could have got a little school model or a bag, but we didn't have anything like that in the house. And you've got to have something that you can carry and have that small. So we used a Rubik's Cube. I thought it was a bit of learning, bit of brain work, why not? So we had these 3 options for when we left the house. So that is step 1. Identify your challenging area or activity and find objects to associate with it. Right. Step 2. You're now going to take your objects and you're going to use them for communication. So when we're leaving the house in our scenario and we're going to the park, I would crouch down to my son's level. I would take the tennis ball, which was the symbol of the park, and I would put it in his hand and say park. So it's very simple words and you're using the object to communicate. But you're also using verbal communication because you're going to build up to that understanding. Now, the benefit of objects, unlike pictures and obviously at the end of the road, verbal communication, you are using multiple senses for this communication. So you've got them seeing the object, you've got it in their hands, they're feeling it, and they are hearing you say the sound. So that gives these multiple methods of communication. And by holding that, I found my son immediately could see it all the time and okay, we're going to the park. Now, the first couple of times you might have a bit of challenge in trying to get them out, but I found it worked pretty much instantly. So in their hand, they can feel it, hear you saying park, and also see it as well. Now, there is an option here where you can add the picture as well, because eventually you're going to move on from objects to pictures. So totally up to you, depends how many things you want to hold on to. But stage 2 is to use the object. Step 3. So your child has the objects in their hand. We are happily on the way to the park. You get to the park, and the stage or step 3 is transitioning. So this means moving from the park. For example, say you want to now go home. And if that is a challenging step for your child and they don't understand it, you need to get another object to signify that next activity. And what you're going to do, you have other strategies you can use. For example, traffic lights, if you're aware of those. Those are red, amber, green to signify start using the activity and stop. Or you can use words, which we do, which was last go, and then all finished. And you would take the object off them and replace it with something else. So if I just use the ones I got here, say we're then going to the car, you would then start the phase again. So you'd place it in the hand, go car, and then you would move on to that activity. And that is stage or step 3 to objects of reference, transitioning to the next activity. So how did we leave the house? We used objects or objects of reference. And there was 3 steps to this. We identified in the first step what challenges we had as a family. And then we found objects that we could use to communicate with my son. Step 2, we then used those objects, we placed them in his hand, we stated where we were going, and then we continued with that activity. And then step 3, we transitioned from that activity to another one with the use of traffic lights or the words last go, all finished. This was fundamentally a life changer for us. And you might think that actually, well, I'm going to have all these objects. How can I carry these all around? Well, I think that you should always use this for areas that are challenging. So we actually only used it in the scenario I explained when we left the house. So we only ever had 3 objects. We kept them at the front door, we used them, and as we grew to that, we then moved on to pictures, which made things a bit more versatile. So subscribe below to keep hearing about what we get up to, about how I merge strategies together, how I show you the hands-on approach to my parenting of a child who's autistic, and how I get the best out of him. So follow, subscribe, head to Facebook, and let me know your thoughts on how you use strategies with your children.